Lucky you. We're headed to La Jolla Thursday. Our kids grew up going to a surf camp there every summer, and
Really?
yeah, so it's my wife's from the Western. Anyway, we're live, I guess. Here we are. Good to see you, everybody.
Oh, hey, everybody! I guess we can talk later about surf camp.
Yeah.
Though that's going to be followed by a request to be adopted by you so that I can go to surf camp, which I would love to do.
It's a funny thing you say that because my wife grew up in the western part of the U.S. and her family's all from California and New Mexico and so on. And I grew up in the East. And we wanted to make sure our kids had a Western experience. And so what we settled on when they were young, my wife had gone to La Jolla from New Mexico in the summers, and we rented a house every week. It was like our big vacation. And they went to a surf camp called Surf Diva in La Jolla Shores. And so all my kids are competent, capable surfers, despite growing up in Northwest DC. Yeah, it was just something we wanted to give them,
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
So Simon, welcome. You've been thanks for doing this. You've just been crushing it lately. And let me just start by telling everybody, if you haven't subscribed and are not a paying subscriber to Hopium Chronicles, your life is insufficient and will be greatly enriched if you do. There is so much good stuff out there that we all have to sort of, in this attention economy, a phrase I actually kind of like, have to make decisions about where we're going to spend our time. And I find myself reading Simon every day. And the interesting thing I find about Simon is I'm never sure what he's going to say about something.
So me neither, by the way.
And for those of us who feel like we've been saying the same thing over and over for years, it's a refreshing trait to find somebody that's that interesting and that unpredictable. But Simon, there's so much to talk about. But one piece that you wrote that really caught my eye, was eye-boggling. I've never seen this put together. Was your piece on what is the real cost of this Iran debacle? I think, Sam, we have a graphic on it that you can put. Yeah, total cost of Trump's war. This is fascinating, because we all tend, or at least I can't say we all. I tend to think of it. Okay, what is the per diem cost of all the shit we're blowing up and all the costs to keep these American service men and women over there and all that stuff. The hard cost, I guess you would call that more. But this is a cumulative. Well, you tell me what it is. You wrote it.
Yeah. No, look, and I want to thank Claude for helping me assemble all of this complicated
I'm
data.
a Claude fan. Claude and I are close.
Claude and I, Claude's a good friend. And but the point about this is that, like so much in our news coverage day to day, we take these kinds of facile, spoon-fed stuff from the White House and from Trump world, and we build out from it, right? Like the default is the bullshit that they put out every day, and then we have to sort of make sense of it all. It's one of the reasons independent media is so important right now. And so the conversation around the cost to the United States of the war has been obviously lie-filled stuff from the Pentagon, 50 billion here, 100 billion there, or whatever, seeming like it's, Trump, little nothings, pennies. But we also know the Pentagon Trump has requested an extra $500 billion this year to the $1 trillion annual budget. That's probably a permanent increase given the costs of this war and all the other things that Trump is doing. So even in terms of that narrow vein of like, what is the Pentagon spending? It's not $100 billion, it's trillions of dollars, right? And to finish the war, to replenish what's been lost. And Trump is stiffing us with that bill. We also know that the American people have paid much higher costs in fertilizer and food and all the other things, that inflation, gas, huge costs. We also know that the cost of the increased inflation means that we're not cutting interest rates. And so interest rates are staying high. And so another unbelievable cost. We know that because interest rates are staying high and the economy has slowed because of Trump's economic policies, the deficit has increased dramatically, costing the United States over the next 20 or 30 years, trillions of dollars more. And that's just here in the US. It's trillions and trillions of dollars that Trump is sticking us, this one man, the one, if you could imagine a scenario that the founders wanted to prevent more than any other, it was exactly what's happened in Iran, right? Yeah. Where a single guy, without any consultation with our allies, with Congress, made a decision that has cost the United States extraordinary trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars over many, many years. But the thing I showed today in that piece is the total cost to the world, not just the United States. Right. And it's many, many trillions of dollars in immediate costs across the entire world. So what Donald Trump has done, I mean, people have to realize that this is what our kids will be inheriting, is that he's not only interfered in the economic relationship between us and every other single person in the world through the tariffs, where we have punished and pummeled every country in the world and lessened their opportunity of working people, but the war has also impacted every single person in the world in a negative way and driven up their costs and made it harder for them to farm and to run their small businesses. And so the costs here are astronomical, Olympian, right? Whatever you want, whatever words you want to use. And he's leaving us, not only in a far weaker position as a nation, because now Iran is, we look weak. Iran's in charge of the Strait of Hormuz, a far greater regional power. The American empire has stumbled, all those things. But the bill of this is going to be unbelievable. And it's why there's no version of our democracy that a president could have made a decision like this without consulting Congress and getting the approval of Congress because of the scale of it. And so he's not only leaving us in a much weaker position, he's also leaving us with an unpaid bill of trillions of dollars. And what I argue in the piece is that the people who should pay for that should be the oligarchs who have enabled him. Right. The American people should not be stuck with that bill. You and I should not pay for a war, an illegal war that we did not authorize, because the bill is going to be. And so Elon, is a wealthy guy. We can take half of his money that he has and pay for all the stuff that he helped enable, the carnage. And so this is, I think that part of what I was getting at in this piece, Stuart, is that, and I'll wrap up, is that I think we're all dramatically underestimating, as angry as the American people are at his betrayal and his terrible government, I think we're actually dramatically underestimating the full scale of the damage that he's done to the United States, over a long period of time, not just in this temporal moment where prices are higher and our democracy is under threat. And he's been, the founding fathers for 250 years kept something like this from happening. But here we are now, and it's a reminder to us in the world about why democracy and freedom are better than autocracy and oligarchy, right? If you ever needed a graphic reminder, this is it.
I don't think, just to kind of give a little context on the military budget, it's very difficult to grasp how big the fucking budget is now. Right. It bounces around between 9 and 10 times larger than all of the next 9 and 10 combined. It is larger than the next 9 to 10 countries combined. And those are like some big countries, China, Russia, it's extraordinary. And they're talking about increasing it and giving Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump it's 500 billion more. It's insane. And I just have to say, because it's just a personal point of pain, that all this is happening on Roger Wicker's watch as chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Roger Wicker, senator from Mississippi. I helped work in his campaigns, known him forever. One of these guys has wanted to be chairman of the Armed Services Committee for many, many years, had been focused on a lot of interest, good, positive foreign policy relations for America, staunch proponent of NATO, USAID. I always thought we ought to spend more on USAID, and he's right, because soft power, it's the easiest money that we can spend, most effective. And here he is. And he's ushering in the era of Pete Hegseth. And I don't see a scenario here where America wins this war.
No, because
we've handed them basically this weapon that this opportunity they have weaponized, that has long been speculated. For Donald Trump to say that they didn't, well, nobody told me about the Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
It's like, I mean, it's just mind-boggling. There's like, ninth graders that study this stuff.
Stuart, I mean, just let's review. Let's take a step back, right? Part of what we do, you and I, when we get together once a month, is we take a step back from the day-to-day and look at everything. Trump took the wrong side of the Russia-Ukraine war, right?
Yeah.
It was, enormous, unbelievable, world-altering mistake by Trump. He's fucked up this war in Iran, where now, the exact opposite of what he wanted to achieve has happened. Iran is now stronger and not weaker, and we are weaker and not stronger.
Yeah.
And are suffering, right? His whole ridiculous Gaza debacle, where he's trying to, seize all the real estate on the Mediterranean and build a resort in Gaza, and I guess assuming that all the Gazans are just going to be the people that live there are going to be the maids and the cooks in all of the resorts that he's trying to build with Jared and Woodcock. This thing, Israel told him to F off this weekend on this ridiculous plan they have, right? He has, he went to China and bent the knee to Xi and looked like a weak, groveling, sniveling, big blubbery baby man when he was over there in China. Like, everything that he's done, he's fucked up. And he is I use this line, I'm sorry for the swearing today, but he's a titanic fuck up. And this stuff is going to cost the country in our standing, our prestige, our, and just money, right? We're going to be poorer, we're going to be much poorer. I mean, he's doing all this, by the way, while also dramatically cutting benefits to the poorest people in the United States and all around the world. I mean, millions of more people are losing SNAP than CBO anticipated. The erosion of people, the flowing of people off of SNAP is happening at a much higher rate than anyone anticipated because of what they've done, throwing millions and millions of people into greater food insecurity. And we know the dramatic healthcare cuts that are raising prices, making it harder for people to get care all over the country. It's incredible. We talk to candidates, both of our organizations. The stories that you're hearing from candidates on the ground about clinics closing and hospitals suffering, it's very real. This is not an abstract thing that's happening in communities all across the country. So it's the insult of this sort of unlimited budget spending without any regard, without any check, without any, and then while also just giving a lot less to the poorest and struggling people in America. The morality of this is outrageous. And, we need, part of the reason I wrote about this is I interviewed Greg Meeks, who's the House Foreign Affairs ranking member last week, who will be, one of the most important leaders of this country when we take back power in January, because he will be the face of the Democratic Party to the world as the head of foreign affairs. And he talked about how he's going to be traveling and going to capitals and waving the flag, and showing America that the pro-democracy forces are back in power. It was an important interview for me just to hear him with his ambition, right? Not just with his understandings, but his ambition and understanding the historical role that he was going to play. And Stuart, it just shows to me, my last point on this is that we spend a lot of time as a family talking about how when we're back in power, we're going to lower costs and fix healthcare. But this work that we have to do internationally is going to be of equal import for our future. And we need to create more space in our family for these conversations and to give our leaders more space to go lead on this and not feel like they always have to pivot back to kitchen table issues.
Yeah, I mean, the degree to which America became wealthy because of the Pax Americana is something, understandably, we're human, so we take it for granted because it's always been that way. But the reason you can get in your car and drive from London to Prague is the Pax Americana. I mean, our huge trading partners there, and just this alliance of democracies. And Trump betrayed that in Ukraine. And the irony of that, if you use that word, I'm not sure, but Ukraine is going to win this war, and America is going to lose the war because America military is going to be far behind where the Ukrainians are in their technology. I'm going over to Kyiv next week, and what they're doing is extraordinary. They're reinventing warfare and across Ukraine, and it's such a tragedy that a generation is going to grow up and not live in a world in which America is a world leader. It's going to be very, very difficult to reestablish trust, to reestablish this kind of faith that America will be there. And, also, Simon, one thing that strikes me, as a guy that used to work in the Republican Party, Trump is laying the predicate for, I think, an acceptance of a far more center-left government than would have been, because you have an absence of a sane conservative alternative. And Trump has proven that every criticism about the Republican Party was right.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that to the extreme that we were accused of, that we were a party that was racist, a party that was backward looking, that a party that favored the rich, a party that really only focused on helping those who were like us, which meant helping us like, white folks. It's, I argued against that for years and I was wrong. It turns out that is exactly what the Republican Party is, and is very happy to be it. And, this is a setting for the French Revolution, I mean, as I heard someone say about, the whole tax the billionaires and eat the billionaires. He goes, all you have to do is eat one. And that, then the message will get across. But look, I got to talk to you about Michigan, because I mean, that's another example that, I mean, certainly if you had woken me up 2 years ago and said this was going to happen, I would have said, I don't think so. I don't know. But I found Dr. Elsay incredibly impressive. And one of the things that kind of fascinates me on a sort of almost trivial is, well, one, the guy's a Rhodes Scholar, which is not an unimpressive thing. And he's a tremendous athlete. He was captain of every one of the teams. At Oxford, he was captain of the lacrosse team. And, you watch him and he looks like an athlete.
Yeah.
He was, 3 sports in high school, captain of his team. And I hope at some point his campaign will talk sort of about that, because I think it's a sort of key code to say, okay, what is this guy really like? Well, if you were in high school with him, you were, and on his teams, you were voting for him to be captain. And he was like a really good athlete, which, I mean, look, it's not to say that to be a good athlete, I don't want Aaron Rodgers in the U.S. Senate, but I think as they try to create, they being my old party, this sense of otherness about him, I think that this bond of sports, in the same way that sports changed civil rights, same way sports changed South Africa with rugby. It's often said it was the first time that blacks and whites cheered for each other and meant it. And I'm fascinated by the impact of college sports on civil rights in the South, or in the country, but most notably in the South. I hope they get into some of that, because I think it's like, okay, you want to know what he was like? He's like us. He's just smarter, better educated, and seems to come from an extraordinary family of people who, a family that really has the right values and tremendous focus on education. But how do you see? Well, first, let's start with the threshold question. Do you think he can win?
I think he can win. I think the cycle, a state like Michigan should vote Democratic. The gubernatorial candidate we have there is, up by high single digits. And so the climate is right. I think he has. I have two. Let me make a couple points about it. Number one is that I do think that we are seeing the birth of a new Democratic Party, and as you know, Stuart, these things, it's critical that parties regenerate and they evolve and they grow and they innovate, and to not stand pat, right? It's just critical in a country this dynamic. And also we've suffered a shock, right? I mean, Trump is a shock to the system, but everything has changed, right? And we need to change with it. And I think that you're seeing, whether it's Sarah Trump Garrett in Iowa or Dr. El Said, I mean, you're seeing new things emerge. It's not all one type of thing, right? Spanberger, Sherrill, and Dr. El Said, right? There's just the Spanberger, Sherrill positioning, which is, women who serve their country in uniform or in the CIA, is sort of also a new thing, right? In our politics, it's very relevant to the moment of the betrayal by Trump of the country. And you're seeing a lot of former military people and national security people enter our politics serving in a new way. So I think one thing is that I see politics as like lots of streams flowing into a big river. And, it's not one river, it's lots of streams flowing into it. And there's just a lot of interesting stuff happening with the Democratic Party right now as we evolve and change. Second is that I do think that some of these victories this year and late last year of more left kind of younger politicians, I think will allow younger people who drifted from us to see more of themselves in our party. And I think that that's healthy for us because it's like, okay, the Democratic Party is changing. There are people emerging who are more consistent with who I am and my values of a younger generation. And I think that makes us stronger, right? This sort of diversity of choices, because as you know, Stuart, better than anybody, you need candidates who fit their districts and states. It's the most incredibly important thing in recruitment, is to have people that are a good fit and people feel comfortable with. And I have a piece coming out later this morning about this with some polling and so on that goes into this. And so I think he's got, but I think he has work to do. I don't think we should underestimate how new a thing he is, right? And how sort of different he is than is what's come before. And that he's got work to do to bring along the African-American community, the Jewish community, to reach out to the Haley Stevens, crew that voted for him. He is going to get othered, to your point. I mean, you probably understand better than anybody what they're going to do to him. It's already begun. It's going to be vicious and brutal, and and it's going to be a rough race. But he has the skill. The cycle favors him. The climate favors him. The party is healthy and done well. We've governed well in Michigan as Democrats for a long period of time. Whitmer was a very good governor, did really good things. We have a strong kind of sense that the party in Michigan is good. And he's obviously, as you pointed out, he's a generational talent, but he's got work to do. And I guess my final point I just want to make, Stuart, because I want to, over the next few weeks, I want you to chew on this. I think one of the streams, in addition to sort of the new kind of muscular left that we're seeing in the Democratic Party, which is certainly a thing this cycle, it's kind of a new thing, is I think that a lot of our candidates are running on virtue and character. And to your point about the abandonment of the Trump world, of the center of a whole lot of politics, one of the things they've abandoned is virtue, character, and service to community, right? It's become about, oligarchical betrayal, right? In essence, and you're seeing candidates emerge in the initial set of ads. And at the end of the day, Stuart, people talk a lot on their campaigns, but what they put into ads is where they think is most important. And you're seeing candidates really running and leaning hard on virtue and character in a way that I don't really remember on our side, right? This is kind of a new thing. We have Lutheran and Presbyterian ministers running. James Tallarico is the seminarian. There's a new religious left language that is, or I don't even think that's the right term for it, but a new language around virtue and character that is also new, that I think is very present in a lot of the candidates. And by virtue and character, what I mean is these are people who serve the community. they've been there as a firefighter or a union leader or as a teacher or as a professor in a university stewarding young people. These are people who you admire, you respect from the commitment to their community. And this is a very different kind of politics too, I think, for us that we're seeing emerge. And it's muscular and strong and authentic and speaks to the moment as much as some of the other streams flowing into this big river of our pro-democracy family right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I sat around in these rooms on the Republican side when people were literally laughing at the notion that a guy named Barack Hussein Obama could get elected president. So how'd that work out, guys? And I thought one of the brilliant things that the Obama campaign did when they were sort of introducing him to a larger audience was to fit him in an American narrative. That, they talked about the service on his grandfather's side, mother's father's side in World War II. And they made it that here is proof that his rise, his ability to rise, his ability to be the nominee of a major party, is an endorsement of the best of what it means to be American. And I think this is something that weirdly, a lot of Republicans have had the opportunity to do, and they just reject it, and it baffles me. If you look at Ron DeSantis,
right,
he comes across as this angry, mean guy, mean at the world, angry at the world. There's another way they could have presented DeSantis, which was, look, very middle-class guy. I think his dad was a cable installer, and he was able to go to, best schools in the world, served his country. He could say, I embody what's best about America, not like I'm a guy who's mad at what America's become. But I think DeSantis is a guy who's mad at what America's become. So you can't do that with him. But it's just fascinating to me. And I hope that they do this in Michigan, because I think he's very, very much an endorsement of what it means to be an American and why it is we have these values. And I go back to that extraordinary statistic, which I'm going to get wrong here, but some very high number of Fortune 500 companies have CEOs who are either first generation American or immigrants. Where was Steve Jobs' father born? Syria. That would have been great. We could have avoided this whole Apple thing if we just kept him out. That would have been super. Who founded Google? And I think that that mecca of America as a place you want to come to succeed, and you can succeed. And it's about who you are, not and what you do, not who your parents were. Is more than probably anything what makes America unique. I mean, say what you will about Ronald Reagan. His last speech in office was an ode to immigration, where he talks about this. You could be, move to France and live there all your life, but you'll never be considered a Frenchman. You come to America and you're an American. So I hope that Democrats really take advantage of that, because, we are becoming a minority-majority country.
Yeah. And
it seems to me, you look at someone like Dr. El-Sayed, he represents what's the best of America. And look, I don't agree with him on every issue, but what the hell? I mean, I don't really think that matters. And there'll be others in the Senate and the Democrat Party that won't agree with him on every issue. And that's fine. That's how it's supposed to work. So I don't know. You look at a guy like Mike Rogers, he's such this kind of nothing guy. It's I don't know.
Listen, they're gonna, Stuart, you know what's coming now, right? I mean, you use the term, because I think this is a term that is the othering, and it's the tactical othering of all of our candidates that are going to come. The national overlay is going to be that the Democratic Party has become communist, and socialist, and that's going to be the national backdrop. I assume Trump's going to put hundreds of millions of dollars in his media behind that, and drape himself in the flag and try to other us ideologically, right? Why work to other and degrade our candidates each individually in each of their races. I think the challenge, what I write about today in my post, which is not out yet, but it'll be out as soon as we're done. I got to finish it up. Is the Times released this kind of fascinating article yesterday about that reviewed some of the polling they did in the Senate races. They're very excellent polling they did at the battleground, where, by the way, they tested issues around character and virtue. And one of the things that we learned in that polling is that the number one reason people were voting for our Senate candidates in the battleground were character and virtue. The number one, more than tariffs or healthcare or anything else. When they allowed, and you understand this, the polling they did is they allowed the questions to be open-ended.
Right.
They didn't have a battery, right? So they didn't push people towards an answer. And in every Senate race, the number one reason people were voting for our candidates were their character and virtue. It was shocking. I had already been writing about this, but I was grateful for the Times. And one of the things they did is they went back and looked at the data about party perception of the extremism of the party versus the extremism of each individual Senate candidate. And what they found, and this is not going to be surprising to you, that in Iowa, for example, 57% of voters said that the Democratic Party was too extreme, but only 25% said that about Josh Turek, our Senate nominee. And that, so this issue that you hear in our family about the Democratic Party being bruised and we're unpopular is not relevant because the Democratic Party brand is not on the ballot. We have candidates that are on the ballot, individual candidates who we have recruited well, and we've had good candidates come out of the primaries who are from their districts and meet and are comfortable and familiar to them. And it's just a fascinating set of data because it reminds you that so much of the shadow world of our political commentary, it's like Plato's cave, right? Like it's just this stuff that people talk about that is interesting but not relevant, and oftentimes. And what's relevant is these head-to-head races where the Democrats are seen as being far more of their community. They're familiar, right? So when you're familiar with somebody, it becomes much harder to other them. And that's part of what's going to be so interesting. And one of the reasons I'm still optimistic about us being able to withstand the barrage that's about to come, because the sort of underlying structure of where the data is right now is that we have huge advantages in character and virtue in all these Senate races, enormous advantages, which is going to be very hard for them to do the swift boating and the unraveling and sort of do what they do, right, which is to turn our virtues into vices. And it's going to be much harder this cycle, I think, than it is going to be normally. And it's one of the reasons I'm optimistic we're going to be able to withstand the unbelievable billion-dollar barrage of negative ads that are about to come against us.
Yeah, look, so this is a piece you've written that's coming out?
It's coming out, and I didn't finish it before we came on here. It'll be out by noon or so, or by 11:30 Eastern time.
All right, so look, we got to wrap this up, but this is another reason to subscribe to the Hopium Chronicle. And I got to say, I could not agree with you more about this. There's a lot of proof points here, and you made a reference to New Jersey and Virginia, where the Democratic Party numbers weren't great, and the candidates won by over 10 points. And states where I've helped elected Republican governors. So this, not very long ago. So these are not like, super guaranteed blue states. And I've said this often, if I ran the Democratic Party, God help us, I would just shut up about the Democratic Party and I would talk about the candidates.
Me too. I'm with you, brother.
I mean, I don't think people, I'm sitting in California. What's the number 2 party in California? No party preference.
Yeah.
I just don't think that, I think this concept of trying to define this moment, I think parties to a large part is kind of like, why? I don't know. I mean, the same reason bowling clubs are declining. It doesn't mean bowling has declined that much. It's just, people like, why should I do this? Well, look, Simon, thank you so much, brother. You do amazing work. Everybody out there, read Simon, read the Hopium Chronicle. What I find really, really fascinating about this moment in a media sense is that something like Hopium Chronicle could go from an idea you had to you have a huge following now, and you're raising tons of money. I mean, it's a perfect example of why the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are less powerful, because, you know, back in the day, you wouldn't have had this opportunity. So,
listen, I'm sure you
you're
feel
able
the
to
same
speak
way.
directly to people.
It's a blessing, Stuart. We're all lucky. You know, we're all lucky that we have this opportunity. We're lucky that the communities are supporting us. You know, I'm grateful every day that I get to do this work the way that I'm doing it, with no filter, with no editor, with no, just throwing shit against the wall, and in the way that we do, right? And it's in a time of transformation and change, this kind of, commentary that we're all involved in, this kind of new media. This is really important because we have to go build a new thing. That's the key here. We have to build a new and better thing. And all of us in our own way are doing that through this new medium that we have. And so thank you for, Lincoln Square and all that you guys have done. I appreciate these. I love hanging out with you once a month. Whatever reports you do from Ukraine, can you make sure you send them to me so I can include them in Hopium?
Yeah.
I learn a lot from you about your trips there. And, I'm particularly interested to know, because it certainly seems like the last 2 weeks have been very, very bad for Putin. And I'm just fascinated to hear what you hear when you get there.
Yeah, look, we'll talk about it. But, I mean, it's horrible what's happening in Ukraine. And it's largely because America hasn't given them the weapons to defend themselves.
Yeah.
Which is so extraordinary, that depressing, that we're not giving a European democracy in the largest land war since World War II weapons to defend itself. They're not asking for us to come and die, which, the Greatest Generation did, but give them weapons. But at the same time, when you look at these stories about Kyiv, it's, millions of people, and not to say that a night when 20 people die and 40 are wounded isn't a horrible, horrible human crime. But you are not going to break the will. It didn't work in the Blitz. It didn't work when we tried in Germany.
Or Iran, by the way.
Or Iran. It's a perfect example. It has the inverse effect. It always does. And, you don't say, okay, a good friend of mine was killed in a bombing, therefore I want to, give Russia what it wants. What are your human response? So anyway, it's another conversation, but I think sort of two somewhat contradictory things. We should honor and focus on the tragedies of the individual sacrifices that are happening in Ukraine on a daily level. But at the same time, we should not confuse that with losing a war. And you're using a hypersonic missile on a terror campaign with no strategic input behind it. You're losing a war. You've lost, and you've lost any concept of how to win the war. So anyway, we'll talk more about that. But thank you, Simon, and everybody read it. And let's push 87 days to the election. Is that right?
Listen, we talk at Hopium. I'll end with this about what is the goal of all of this that we're doing, right? What's the purpose? And I paraphrase Lincoln by saying that our mission is to ensure there's a new birth of freedom here and everywhere in the world. And I think that, that looks a little bit more possible today than it did a year ago. And so, I'm ready to go rumble and go win this, because the next step is we just got to elect as many of these 40 to 50 House and Senate candidates as we possibly can. That's it. We got to win every race we can. And make them weaker and make us stronger.
Yep. The reason we're in this moment is because of an election. The way we get out of it's an election. Okay, brother. All right. Thank you. And thanks everybody. Out there, and look forward to talking again soon.
Thanks.
All the best.
And safe travels, Stuart.